Hey Reggie, how you doing, man?
I'm okay.
Man,
I'm sitting here, SCI Camp Hill, and reaching out, man. Put my face out here, put my story out here.
you look good, bro. I haven't seen you in a little while.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. You too.
I wanted to share your story with some people too, because you have one of those unique situations that a lot of people aren't familiar with and aren't, it's sort of one of those like unbelievable stories. So, like, you feel like explaining that?
Yeah, that'll be perfect, man. So people, can hold on to their seats because this is definitely interesting and an insight on what's wrong with the criminal justice system and things that has gone wrong in the 90s and the 2000s and so we want to shine a light on it.
You want to start like maybe perhaps with like your arrest, like the day you were
um
arrested, leading up to it.
yeah, I'm gonna lead up to him, as I'm gonna let the people know a little bit about myself and then I go to my arrest.
Okay.
Okay. For all you out there, my name is Reginald Johnson. um Friends who grew up with me know me as Reggie, or when I was a kid, my aunt named me White Boy because I'm, so high yellow in the wintertime. So that's what most of the people from the neighborhood know me by. I grew up in a troubled home in the 80s, with the crack epidemic and all those type of things going on. I always was fond of playing basketball since I was like 8 years old. So by the time I got to junior high, I was very good, and I decided to move with my grandmother in the suburbs of Philadelphia so that I can play for a better school and have a better chance of making it to having a scholarship to go to college. So I moved with my grandmom in Abington, PA, place where Josh Shapiro comes from. Actually, he was state representative when I was home. All our community, was high on him. We voted for him back then. And so I went through high school. I excelled playing basketball. I was good guy in high school. Everybody, loved me. I got along with everybody. And graduating senior year, I had a scholarship to Coppin State to play basketball, but I had got in some trouble with some friends and blew my scholarship. So I graduated in 1994. And a year after graduation, 1996, once I lost my scholarship, I fell on opiate addiction. Every day I was getting high off of syrup, Xanaxes, Percocets, and things like that. So one night I was out with a couple friends, and my one friend he had his mom car. He came and picked me up, and we drove to the city and picked up another one of his friends. And we decided to go down to 17th and Jefferson where we buy our syrups and pills. So I went down there. We all bought things to get high off. I had bought about a half a pint of syrup, 20 Xanaxes, and like three Tumenols and a couple Percocets. And I took them all that night because that was my dosage. They actually, get high. I know
Um,
some would think that you're over D with that, but that
you,
was enough for me just to get me high.
you build up a
So,
tolerance to it.
yeah, yep. And it really had me,
You know.
zooted up. So that night we were high, we just was riding around, and then my one friend, he was like, let's go to the strip club. So we was drunk. By the time we got to the strip club, my get high had kicked in, so I was comatose, and and the rest of the night just seemed such a blur to me. My co-defendant explained to me what happened that night. All I can remember was sitting in the car outside the club, and I vaguely remember talking to one of the strippers. I remember her name was Buttercup because I had, picked her up and dated her a few times in the past before then. And I was and then my friends came running back to the car, and she kind of yelled because they told her to get the hell out the way. And they hopped in the car, and then we drove off for another about 8 or so blocks to Broad and Glenwood, and cops were out there. So some guys behind us flagged the cops down and said that the guys in the car had robbed them. So they came over and got in the car. The one guy that was with us, he jumped out the window. He was the driver. He jumped out the window and got away. And I was sitting there, I'm still high out my mind. My co-defendant's in the back seat, and we got a next thing I know, I was getting kicked in the head by one of the police officers, locked up and charged with robbery.
Wow. And this is and you've been here ever since, basically?
And right now, I have 29, almost 30 years, and I've been in prison since
Mm.
1996. This occurred September 1996, a few days after Tupac got killed. I never forget it. And I've been in here
Wow.
for this simple robbery, for which I didn't commit, for 30 years now.
Wow. Well, I mean, what the interesting part would be how could that happen? How could, an innocent man get put in jail for so long? You want to explain like the court process you went through?
Yes. It's starting from that night. I wasn't into, those type of things. I got high and came from, what I'm saying, my grandma raised me pretty well. I had my bank card on me and I had my state identification on me. And when the cops locked us up and took us to the police station that day, I believe my co-defendant told them was like, Reggie didn't have anything to do with anything. And they said that, well, the one guy got away, so both of you are going to jail for it. So, you would think, well, how did I get in trouble if I didn't have anything linking to me? Well, I didn't. I like again. I didn't have the guns. The guy who got away, he had a gun on him. The guy in the back seat, my friend, he had a gun on him. The spoils of the robbery that they had was a watch, a Seiko watch, and my co-defendant, he said one guy had like $8 and the other guy didn't have no money. So I'm like, damn, we going to jail for $8 and a watch. Well, what the
Oh,
detectives did to incriminate me was they discarded my bank card because that will show reasonable doubt.
yeah,
Who rides around robbing people when you got a bank card with money in it?
right.
I had actually, before we went to 17 Jefferson, I actually stopped by the bank and took about $100 out, and one of them and had part of it was a $50 bill. No one has $50 bills unless you actually get them from the bank. They're hard to come by.
Back
Did
then,
was
yeah.
took Yeah, so what they did was took my $50 bill and told the victims to say that they were robbed for $50 because that was the only thing that kind of linked me to it. So that's how I got charged. And we set for trial, a year later.
Reggie, I'm familiar with that sort of tactic. You said, the cops would tell the, guy to say that this was yours. And I've actually watched it happen. They sort of it's either goes two different ways. The cop would either say it or like basically coax them into it, or they'll say, "Is this?" He also had $50 on him. Was that yours? Why would a person say, "No, that's not mine"? You know what I mean? Even if it isn't theirs, that's free $50. And the
Yeah.
cop is making you look like you're the person that robbed them. You know what I mean? So they're looking for justice too. And then the other way around is, this guy had $50 on it. Was it yours? If they say no, it's like, you sure this isn't your $50? You know what I mean? They coax them into it.
Yes,
That's the
yes, that's
process.
one of the yeah, that's one of the tactics they use. There are numerous tactics that they use. One of the things that made it kind of simpler on them was the guy who jumped out the car that ran and got away. He was also light skinned, tall and light skinned. So when the victims pulled up to the car, they just said, yeah, it was both of them who did it because they never seen the guy who actually jump out the car or whatever. So of course the detectives was more eager to go along with that. Like, yeah, well, these two light skinned guys, these are the two ones that's left. So these are the ones that are going to jail for it. And I'm sure at their time, even detectives wasn't thinking that this young man will be sitting in jail for 30 years now
Yeah.
for behind this robbery.
Yeah. I mean, who would have even thought 30 years? So, all right. So, I mean, so then you go to court. You're sitting in the county jail on like a high bail. Did you have a bail?
Yeah, I was on probation for getting caught with syrup, pills, marijuana, simple possessions after I graduated high school. So I was on probation. And once you're on probation, they drop a
Yeah.
detainer on you so you can't make bail. So I'm stuck in Philadelphia County. Like I said, I'm living in Montgomery County, but I'm stuck in Philadelphia County with my co-defendant. He couldn't make bail. He didn't have money to make bail, so he had to stay as well. We could have separated our cases and me claim actual innocence, but the guy that got locked up with this was my friend, and his family were also like violent. So he came up with a story to try to beat the case in trial, altogether. So I went along with it, basically out of fear of what may happen to my brother, because they threatened my brother if I didn't go along with the story, and also because I wanted to help him out. You know what I'm saying? And it sounded like a pretty solid story. So we proceeded to go to trial with a story that a robbery never happened.
And
That
you're
they
young,
were just
right, Reggie? How old were you
yes.
exactly?
I was 20 years old, and my co-defendant was 18 years old.
So you're kids.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. When you think back all the time, now we're older, you look back and say, damn, we were just kids, man.
Wow.
And even, my co-defendants and them doing the dumb stuff that they did, it was just like, kid dumb stuff. And I caught the bad end of the stick of it, the real bad end of the stick of it. Like I said, I'm still in here. The judge sentenced me to 37 and a half to 75 years for it. So I got third 29 in now. I won't see the parole board for 8 more years.
So were you assigned an attorney?
Yeah, well, I'm sitting down in the county. Um, the court had each courtroom had a public defender assigned to their courtrooms. So the public defender assigned to my courtroom came to see me down at CFCF. So I went to go see him, and I had a big beard, big Muslim beard. I was Muslim at the time. So he came in. He said, "You're Muslim?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Oh man," he said, "You better cut your beard off and don't wear no kufis in the courtroom because the judge don't like Muslims." Now I had already, been in the county for like 8 months at the time. I hear how notorious my judge was with sentencing and being oppressive. So, I was heavy into my religion at the time. So I said, well, I don't care. He's not God. You know what I'm saying? He's not. I'm going there and stand firm on what I believe in, because he's not God. So he was like, all right. So I eventually hired a lawyer, and we went in and proceeded to trial with my co-defendant's story.
And you're wearing the kufi?
No, I didn't wear the kufi, but I did have the big beard, and the judge
Yeah,
knew
that's
it. He knew that me and my co-defendant were Muslim.
yeah. That I mean, back then, that was very stereotypical of
Yes,
especially
yes.
Philadelphia.
We went to pick the jury, right? So while we picking the jury, we see this one guy. He might have been about his early 30s. He dressed real fly. He was like the cool ladies guy kind of guy. He had his designer shades on. So we were like, pick him, because he looks cool. He seemed like he's going to be down to earth and give a reasonable solution. So lo and behold, my co-defendant's girlfriend was in the courtroom at the time. She was at trial every day. So she looked and she kind of looked vaguely familiar. So later that afternoon in the hallway, the juror approached her and said, "Hey, you remember me?" And she was like, "You look familiar." He said, "I met you last year at DC Tide's Power 99 barbecue." So she was like, "Oh yeah, I remember being there." So he was like, "Well, what you doing here?" So she lied and said, "Well, that's my brother in there and one of the trials. You know what I'm saying? One of the guys is on trial." So he was like, "Oh yeah? Oh well, listen, don't worry about it. You know what I'm saying? The most they gonna get is hung jury because I'm gonna find them not guilty." He went on to say something about his brother went to jail many years ago and had died, and his mother had been the same. I never got to find out if that part of the story was true or not, but that's what he told her. So they exchanged numbers and communicated. I think trial started on Thursday. They communicated Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday of the trial. So his whole thing, like I say, was being a ladies' man. Come Saturday, he offered to take her out, and he kept nagging her about it. Like, let me take you down to my studio, take some pictures of you. So she was like, well, listen, I'm gonna be real with you. That's not my brother in there. It's my boyfriend. So now he gets mad. Well, what do you want with a guy that's going to be in jail? He can't do nothing for you, yada, yada, yada. He hung up on her. So once my co-defendant talked to her on like Sunday night, she explained this to him. So I'm like, oh man, I don't know how this is going to pan out. So lo and behold, Monday when the verdict came in, this juror, out of spite, volunteered to be the jury's foreman and stood up and found us guilty on all charges.
Hmm. But did you ever put that in any appeal, or even your co-defendant?
Yeah, my co-defendant, we both put it in. He had put it in first, so they granted him an evidentiary hearing on it, but it only came under the guise of ineffective assistance of counsel for not pursuing that on our first appeal. And so now, during the evidentiary hearing, they questioned the attorneys and say, well, why didn't you pursue this issue? So the attorney said, well, he sent his private investigator out to her, and she was like kind of being hesitant because, she didn't want to get court involved in court. Nobody really wants to
Mm,
get involved in court.
yeah,
So
that could
she
be
finally
scary.
came, yeah, she finally came clean and explained it to him. And once she was on the stand at the evidentiary hearing, she mentioned that he had told her that he was the jury's foreman during the trial because she forgot that he told her that like the last day of trial. So she didn't know. So the judge pretty much denied it by saying we all know that the jury's foreman isn't announced until the last day of trial. So they denied it just because of that. They wouldn't even let me partake in the evidentiary hearing. They just like it said they held me in abeyance. Well, whatever happens to him, what will happen to me?
Did
So
they?
even to this day, 30 years later, I never got to explore this because I haven't had money to hire a proper investigator to really investigate this issue.
So, so the juror though was no one was questioned.
No, the juror was never questioned, never sought after or anything.
So she basically but admits to that it happened on the stand, and then that's the end of the investigation
And
because
that's the
the
end of the
judge.
investigation. Yeah,
Wow.
because they say it was under ineffective assistance of counsel. It wasn't actually what the jury did. It was actually did the lawyer drop the ball by not pursuing that issue.
Well, all right. Well, and all right. He was ineffective. Now what do we do? Isn't that how it should be? That's just not how it is, though.
Exactly. That's how it should be. There's so many constitutional violations that come about later on down the line, but the courts have restrictions, set up under the AEDPA, the Anti-Effective Death Penalty Act, and I mean Anti-Terrorist Effective Death Penalty Act from like 94, 95, and it's pretty much been established to box people out from challenging things like this in the court system. And it's such a huge hole in this thing. It has tens of thousands of people in prison all over the nation where you can't go back and challenge things like this.
Yeah. Because this is were you sentenced before the actual PCRA Act came out?
No, I think PCRA was available. I'm
97.
not.
I think it was
Yeah,
97.
I got sentenced in 97. I don't know because my first PCRA might have went in 2000. So I don't know when the PCRA act actually came about.
Okay. All right. So, all right. You want to go right into the incarceration, or is there anything what else did you raise on an
Yeah.
appeal?
Well, my attorney challenged, and this is interesting. They challenged that my sentence was illegal. So actually, my sentence is not illegal, but it's excessive and harsh. And my judge sentences everyone to an excessive and harsh sentence. He had been admonished over 20, 30 times from the higher courts for his sentencing practices and was remanded. Other guys were sent back and told him to resentence these guys because you did it the wrong way. You know what I'm
Abuse of
saying? Not
discretion.
illegal, but you did abuse of discretion manner. So multiple times he told the higher judges, "I'm not doing nothing. Get him
Yeah.
out my courtroom." And the higher judges had to
And
actually resentence guys like me.
Wow. God, that is. Because he says that judge
Yeah,
still in, and the sad thing is, you have to when you appeal, you have to go before the same judge, which makes no sense.
exactly.
Like
Yeah.
I'm
So for
appealing his abuse. Why do I have to go? I have to explain this to him.
Yeah, why would he wake up and decide to
Yeah,
change it? So me being naive to the judicial system and how things work, because again, I came from high school straight into this this out of the world experience. So my only thing is thinking that right and wrong. So I said, okay, well the judge just gave me all this time because he wants me to go up there and go to school and better myself. So for the first 10 years of prison, that's all I did. I jumped into college courses and I got my associate's degree in business law and business management. I did effective speaking. I took heat and ventilation and went on to electronics and multiple courses. I became a tutor and tutored all, the guys that are in prison who don't know how to read and write. Since, I came from a high academic high school, I was pretty, fluent in reading and writing. So I did all these things because I'm thinking, okay, my judge gonna eventually call me that back one day and see that I've done well and, reduce my sentence. But that's something that also Pennsylvania doesn't allow. No matter if you get 30 years, no matter what you do, you can be an angel in here. You will not go home until those 30 years is up,
yeah.
unless the court system allows you to do so.
There's
And
no
then you have
incentive.
people, yeah, there's no incentive to do nothing. But my incentive was to do it because I'm thinking the judge is going to, look at that and say, bring him back. Like you said, I put these appeals in back to him. He's not going to correct his own ill.
No,
So I never had a chance for at least about 15 years, and he passed away. And by the time you start putting the pills in 15 years later,
time
now we
barred.
got this time bar, this untimely thing. So I just been caught up in that dilemma, man, for so many years. I've spent about 27,000 on lawyers. And, the court system in the 90s and the 2000s wasn't big on giving people a fair shake. So I just kept again denied, denied, denied. And my sentence, when you challenge your sentence, you only get one time, your first time.
Um,
And since my lawyer challenged it as illegal, so the appeals court said that it's not illegal, it's just excessive and harsh, and they can no longer do anything to change it. Now it's out of their jurisdiction.
so it's excessive and harsh. It's an abuse of discretion, but there's nothing we can do. That's basically what they're
Exactly.
saying. Yeah, 30 years, 38 years.
37 and a half to 75 years.
That's, I
Yeah,
mean, and
yeah.
no, and nobody, I mean, nobody was harmed.
Nothing. My co-defendant explained to me what happened. He said that him and the guy that got away, they pulled out their guns and they told the guys give them their shit, and they took the watch, they took the $8 from the one guy, and then they ran. They ran to the car where I was at, and that's all that happened. But the judge has the discretion. He was able to give me the time he gave me because he gave me 10 years for each person. 10 years, 10 years, 10 years. He gave me 5 to 10 for conspiracy and 2.5 to 5 for possession of instrument of crime. The firearm didn't even work. My co-defendant had a broke gun. It didn't even work. So they couldn't even charge him with firearms. So they charged us with possession of instrument of crime. So he ran all of it. Wow. 10, 20, 30, 5 to 10, 35, 2.5 to 5, 37 and a half to 75 years.
I know somebody who was sentenced by that same judge, and he had burglary of buildings, and his sentences were two to four, and but ran consecutive, and it equated to 30 32 to 64 years. And it was
Mm,
just he was just the young drug addict just breaking into
yeah.
buildings. One of the buildings he broke into was a school. He broke in and stole computers, and he did that multiple times, like 5 times that building. But
Mm,
I mean, there was
yeah.
I mean, it doesn't make sense that our system would even allow something like that because what's the benefit? And then especially now, I mean, you'd be an asset to the community. That's what probation, parole, and the DOC is designed now for. It's to protect the community. You would be the antithesis of destroying the community. You would be an asset, and there's very few people that we could say that about being an asset. And there's documentation that you could come home and probably help people.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. My experience in here is that they don't really care about that. The DOC has become so engraved with running the way that it's run and taking in the money that is taken in that justice is the last thing on their mind,
Yeah,
and correcting injustice is the last thing on their mind. Even sometimes they may come out with laws like with me that struck down the mandatory minimum statute, which was a statute that allowed my judge to start with giving me 10 years for each person. And the United States Supreme Court said that that statute was unconstitutional. You
right.
can't use that. But Pennsylvania said, okay, we'll accept that, but we're only going to allow people to get granted of the ones who just came to prison over the last couple years. So the
Yeah,
guys has been locked up since the 90s and the 2000s. Um, oh well, you're stuck. You can't. Your constitutional rights doesn't matter.
I remember that. I remember. I I was in prison in the early 2000s, and I remember there was a cup they used to sell. It was a clear cup with a black lid, and had prison bars on it, and it said "between a rock and a hard place." Remember that cup?
Yeah, yes, sir.
I mean, that
Yeah.
rings true in a situation like you really are between a rock and a hard place. What can you do now?
Yeah, what can I do? I recently been reading the Sentencing Commission manual. They had something set up, and they're still set up, called the Sentencing Commission, where they're a team of like senators, representatives, a couple judges, and people all come together and they draw up a discretionary thing for judges to use when sentencing. So to discourage judges from doing what my judge did to me, he was supposed to take the first count and say, okay, I can give you the statutory maximum on that, which is 10 to 20 years. But for each count after that, he was supposed to drop the offense gravity score, which gives you a higher degree of sentences, to zero. And they said that the judges are supposed to do that so it deters them from giving 10 to 20, 10 to 20, 10
Yeah,
to 20. So he was supposed to give 10 to 20 and then like 2 to 4, 2 to 4, 2 to 4. He still could have ran them consecutively, but he wouldn't have been able to reach up to 37 half to 75. So when he's supposed to says this as sentencing, he didn't do it. He's supposed to fill out a form explaining why he gave me the sentence that he gave me. He didn't do that because he couldn't do that. I was only 20 years old. I haven't had a history of violent crime. So I don't think he even filled out the form that says why he did that or why he didn't for the second and third account drop it down to zero and then proceed to go up from there. So these are the little things and the tactics that the judicial system used to elevate our sentence and put guys like me away for
ever
whatever reason other than,
and forever. For
yeah,
they try to
taking my
put you
life.
guys and then take your voice away, silence you behind these walls, and then you reach out, you cry out for help. Nobody can hear you. Hey Reggie, did you what about the merger laws? Nothing, the merger rights didn't apply to that or laws? The merger statute?
Mm, yeah, no, the merger. They all judges have the ability to sentence you consecutively for whatever counts of crime that you have. Nothing has to be merged for sentencing purposes, or at least not for the things that I were found guilty of. he was allowed to sentence me consecutively. The only thing is he was supposed to drop the second and third account down and then start from there.
If you were given like an, let's say the PCRA Axe time bar finally just dissipated as it should, and people were allowed to appeal, what would your appeal be? I mean, the juror?
Yeah, I would probably try the juror thing even without them eliminating that because maybe that's something that can get around the time bar issue. But if they did eliminate that, then I would go back on my sentencing for the first thing that I said. Excuse me. I would go back to about the sentencing tactic that he used and challenge that. And then the juror issue and Brady violation as well. I had a Brady violation where and my lawyer, he jumped up and snapped about this at trial. They allowed the detective to get on the stand and say that he seen the guy that jumped out the window. He seen him run with a gun in the small of his back because the victim said that there was two guns used. They followed us the whole time, so there was no break in between, but they only found one gun in the car. And again, nothing was in on my possession. So to lead the jury to believe or to cure the curiosity in their mind, well, where's the second gun at? If it's not on Mr. Johnson, where's the second gun? Where's the missing gun? So he got on the stand and lied and said that he seen the other guy run away with it in the small of their back, and that was Brady violation because my attorney said had you turned that evidence over to him, then he would have been able to say the guy that we got away with the gun, he did the crime, and the co-defendant in the back seat who had the other gun and the spoils of the robbery, he did the crime, and my a client had nothing to do with anything. So that would be something else that I would challenge and try to prove.
So you're saying that that the cop basically brought that up right there and then at the trial, like no, it wasn't even a part of any documentation prior to it. Like it just,
Exactly.
like
Exactly.
it's
Just
sort of like,
sprung it on.
yeah, sort of just like to make the story believable.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's.
exactly.
I mean, that's almost worse than a
Exactly.
Brady. That's and and the fact that I've read numerous places because a lot of people really think there's no way for an innocent person to be in jail. They wouldn't allow it. If it even happened, an appeals process would exonerate them, and that's why the news they'll always will report the very few that do. And there's everybody says, well, if you're claiming actual innocence, you have a right to an appeal, but that's not true.
Yeah, that's not true. Unless you got DNA to actually show, and there was a time that they were fighting against that to say,
Yeah.
well, it's untimely. It's untimely. Your actual innocence doesn't mean anything. The law is set up to say you can't fight here anymore. It's untimely. And that's what's boxing us all out from getting back into court to prove our case. And that's why I've been here now 30 years as an innocent man, and I can't have these issues, addressed
Reviewed.
by a fair judge.
When you you said you were on drugs back at the time, and I was a drug addict. So was it never goes away. Were you diagnosed or anything when you got to the prison? Did you see a psychologist or a psych or anything?
Well, in the beginning, like I said, I was engulfed with bettering myself, becoming a better man. Studying religion and different philosophies and following the ways of great mentors of like Robert Kiyosaki's and some of the great guys and it's my guy Napoleon Hill, just to better myself. So I didn't, have diagnosis of anything, but after like 20, 25 years and just being constantly sad and depressed and hurt and crying a lot and just wondering how could this happen, and starting to lose loved ones, my aunts and my grandmothers and all that. I fell into a deep depression. I had to start seeing psych, and I was diagnosed with mental health issues with severe. Now I'm diagnosed as severely mentally ill with depression, anxiety, and personality disorder.
Are you taking medication for that?
Yeah, I take medication for anxiety and depression and personality disorder.
That's pretty severe. That's I a few things we've been talking about recently was that the DOC, the justice system, the injustice causes trauma because it's like that's the person who we're grown up to believe are here to protect and serve us, to save us, and these are the very people that are oppressing us. And I think that causes like psychological trauma because that's sort of like what I've been going through just from that. Like you can't turn to an authority figure because that's who you think is out to get you.
Yeah, and then here's really no one to turn to if you're depressed, and it brings me to tears. I can't turn to my peers because this is prison.
So,
You have to have a macho. You're not allowed to cry. You're not allowed to show the weakness. So, often we cry in the shower, or cry in our cell when we're alone. So when you can't do that, you can't bring it to anyone to offer you the help to help you get through it. You have to just keep swallowing it and keep holding it in. And we all know that that's not good for us, but you have no other option.
yeah, and after 30 years, what does that even do to somebody? Because it's called bottling up inside. But when you
Yeah.
have something as severe as that, what does 30 years of bottling that up do? And it just keeps
Yeah.
building.
Yeah, it's overwhelming. It's too much. I like to tell people that what we do here in prison, people with over 20 years in, is you escape reality. You have to become every day in the mind of prison. You can no longer think about real life. You can no
Well,
longer think about society. You can no longer think about being with a woman. You can no longer think about real food because it'll only enhance your depression and your stress. And stress kills. I had got to the point in 2016 where my stress and depressed levels was so high and I was bottling up so much that my system started to shut down. I couldn't use